All right, gang, week 6, we're talking about market research, another topic that's near and dear to my heart since I used to be a senior research analyst for Jack in the Box, primarily for product testing and trend research. So companies conduct market research because it's important as marketers that we have a pulse on what customers want. So companies can get market research in a variety of ways, and there's a couple of key concepts that I want you to grab out of this lecture. So the learning objectives for this week, understanding the difference between primary and secondary research, also understanding the difference between qualitative and quantitative research. You want to know those three market research terms: focus group, consumer panel, and then population validity and skew. And I'm going to wrap up by showing you how to use Google Forms, which is a free tool that you can use to do market research. All right, so when we think about market research, as I was saying on my opening slide, marketers and companies conduct market research to find out what do customers want, are our products and services and advertising, is it all resonating with our customers? So oftentimes when we're launching new products, we're doing new research to see if the product is hitting the mark with customers or if they want changes. If we're entering into new markets, if we're going after new target audiences, if we're doing branding and positioning or repositioning work. So market research is a big field. And here in San Diego, California, as a city, we have a lot of market research firms because companies like to come to San Diego and do surveys and tests. We have a good demographic variety of diversity. We're up against the border, and we also have good weather, and we're a tourist town. So a lot of big companies like to come to San Diego and do focus groups and testing and things of that. So the pitfalls of market research. So market research is a way to stay close to your customer and know what they want. And that's very important that we're not just guessing or assuming that I'm the target audience, so I know what my customers want. So you want to stay close to your customers. It takes time, however, to do market research. So if you're doing a new product launch and you have to take, 4 to 6 weeks to gather consumer feedback, because you have to get a large enough sample size of people giving you feedback on a new product to make it valid feedback. So that takes time to gather feedback, because I'm sure as consumers, you've had phone calls or people approach you asking you to provide some feedback, do some market research, and the standard answer most of us give is no thanks, right? So it's hard to get a large enough sample size. So it does take time, and that can slow down product launches and decision making. And it also costs money. So you may have to hire a market research firm, you may have to pay some folks to come in for focus groups. But market research does take time, and oftentimes it does take money. Now, with the advantages of social media, a lot of companies have found out that they can use social media as a way to collect market research data directly from consumers without having to pay for it. So that's a wonderful use of social media as well. Another reason why companies, particularly large companies, do market research is to defend the decisions that they're making. So I can tell you from my personal experience working in large companies, senior vice presidents of marketing, don't get to be senior vice presidents without making sure that they cover their rear ends and don't make mistakes when it comes to new product launches or new marketing initiatives. So how do they make sure that they've defended those decisions? Well, they do market research. So sometimes market research is meant as a defensive exercise to defend decisions that are already planning to be made. So the first thing I want you to know is the difference between primary and secondary research. So this is pretty straightforward. Primary research is research that you go out and get brand new. Secondary research is research that is already out there. So for example, when you're doing research in this class for assignments that I'm asking you to do outside research, you're doing secondary research. You're going to websites or looking up stuff in the textbook and citing those sources. Most of the research papers you write in school, all of that data is coming from secondary sources. Unless the instructor asks you to go out and actually talk to people live or survey people out in the field, something of that nature where you're gathering that research brand new and live, that would be primary research. So pros and cons of each type. Secondary research is quicker to get because it already exists, right? So it's quicker to get and it's cheaper to get, but it may not ask the specific questions that you need for your marketing situation. If you're launching a new product and you want to ask questions about how customers feel about that product, are you likely to buy it again? Do you feel that it's the right size? Was it advertised correctly? There's not going to really be much secondary research for a new product that's being launched. So you'd have to do primary research. So secondary research, it's quicker and it's less expensive, but it doesn't always work for specific marketing situations and it's not specific to your situation. Primary research, on the other hand, enables you to ask exactly the questions you want of exactly the target audience that you want to ask. However, it does take time. The most common types of primary research are surveys. You see some other ones listed here on your slide on the green boxes. So there's a variety of primary research, but just know the difference. Primary is existing and secondary is existing and primary is research that you go out and get brand new. The next piece is qualitative versus quantitative research. So I'm going to start off by talking about qualitative research. So qualitative research is when you ask what we call open-ended questions of the consumer, and you're trying to get intimate feedback on how they feel about a new product or a new ad campaign. So an example of a qualitative question would be something like, tell me how you feel about this new product, or why would you not be likely to buy this product? That's a qualitative question, and they're going to have to give you some verbatim response, either writing something up or in a focus group where they're talking live. So here you're mining for feelings and attitudes and interests, and it tends to be small sample sizes because it's harder to collect this data on a mass scale. Now with sentiment analysis, where you can actually mine for keywords like on social media sites where people are typing up and posting and commenting, you can look for certain words, they call that sentiment analysis, and try to mine for things in that way in a large sample size. But typically qualitative methods are small sample sizes like focus groups, where you're interviewing maybe 8 to 12 people in a room and asking them questions, or an in-depth interview. Those would be qualitative situations. Most common one being a focus group. So when I was at Jack in the Box, we held many focus groups. I moderated some of these focus groups where you're the person in the room who's asking people questions and kind of managing the process. It's pretty fun, you know. There's usually a two-way mirror and the client's on the other side and they're watching while people are asking questions. And you know, sometimes you're writing up questions in the little behind-the-scenes booth and feeding them to the moderator to ask additional questions. But we have to remember that a focus group is a small sample size. It's 8, maybe 12 people max, and you can't have a huge focus group where it's like an auditorium. It's just too hard to get everybody's feedback. And focus groups are qualitative. You're asking for people's opinions. One classic example of focus groups is Nike. Nike used focus groups when they were talking about exercise and trying to come up with some brand ideas like why people exercise. And it was in a focus group where a customer said something to the effect of, you know, when it comes to exercise, my motto is just do it. Just do it. And there was an ad executive sitting behind the focus group glass, and they heard that, and he wrote that down. He's like, huh, that could be a good campaign. And lo and behold, Nike came up with their famous Just Do It campaign, which they used for many, many years. That came out of a qualitative research, specifically a focus group. Now, it says here in this slide, you notice I also added that a focus group is effective when it's used in conjunction with a quantitative survey. So We'll get to quantitative stuff next, but qualitative, short sample size, small sample sizes, open-ended questions like tell me how you feel, and you're trying to get kind of large verbatim responses. Compared to quantitative research questions. So quantitative research is where you're doing large sample sizes, like 200 people plus, and those large sample sizes are statistically representative of the population. So when you take your statistics classes, and you're like, we have a 200 people answered this survey with a confidence interval or plus or minus 5%. That means it's 95% accurate, right? So quantitative methods have close-ended questions. So a qualitative question would be, tell me how you feel about this product. Whereas a quantitative question would be, please rate how likely you are to buy this product on a 5-point scale, with 1 being never and 5 being always, right? So they have to choose a specific answer. That's a close-ended. Or would you buy this product? Yes or no. And they have to choose one of those. That's a quantitative question. Quantitative methods are used for large sample sizes, and it makes it easy to roll up the data because people are selecting specific answers. So it's very easy when you've collected all your data, you can look at it and say, 70% of the people who responded said that they were very likely to purchase this product if it were to be launched, right? So, and the best types of market research blend both a combination of quantitative questions and qualitative questions. Quantitative questions, quantitative research, kind of give you a temperature of the room, right? So are we in the right direction? 70% of the people said they would buy this product again. Okay, that's good information, but we don't know why. So a qualitative question would follow up and not only tell you the temperature of the room, but why people feel the room is hot, right? So 70% of the people said they would buy this product. That's a quantitative question and the data result. And qualitative research would say, when we asked people in qualitative focus group research, they said the reason they would buy this product is because they believed that it was fresh and healthy, right? So that's something you're not going to get out of quantitative research. So when we use the two combined, one tells us if we're heading in the right direction, and then a qualitative question tells us the why behind it, if that makes sense. Now you're going to see a link here for Google Forms, so I'd encourage you to click on that link, and there's a tutorial there on how to use Google Forms, and I'll get to that in a subsequent slide. So the most common quantitative methods are surveys. So that's putting together a survey and people have to select a predestined answer. I'm sure you've filled some of these things out before. Maybe you're doing customer surveys or new product purchase surveys, and they tend to have a lot of quantitative research questions. Even barcode information is quantitative, so it's measuring responses and it's rolling up that data. So when we interpret the data, we found that there was a situation, a problem we needed to solve. We're going to launch a new product, and we put together a survey, and we gathered a bunch of research, and now we have to interpret the data. And some key issues that come up when you're interpreting your market research results: population sample, confidence intervals, and validity. So these are some terms that are kind of familiar in the market research realm. So population refers to how many people did you talk to. And when we're doing market research, the people that we're talking to are our target audience. So it's not the population as a whole, it's the population, the number of people in our target audience. So if you were to hire a market research firm, one of the first things they would ask you, say, hey, I'm looking to hire a market research firm. I want to do some focus groups in San Diego. We're launching salads at Jack in the Box, and we want to talk to women and see how likely they would be to come to our restaurants and purchase salads from us. And the market research company would say, okay, so what's the population you're after? And you would say something like, we're looking for women between the ages of 18 to 44 who are working with a household income of 35,000 plus. So okay, so again, the population really is a description of your target audience. Sample is how many people do you want to survey? That'd be the next question that the market research firm would ask you. How many people are you looking to talk to? And as the marketing person for your company say, we're looking for a sample size of 200. Typically, when you get quantitatively into sample sizes of 200 or higher, you have enough data responses that it's representative of the larger population for the market that you're in. So, if you did a sample size of 30, that's not very many people, and you could make decisions for the company as a whole based on only talking to 30 people and find out that it ends up being off base. So 200 is typically the number that a lot of market research goes after, is at least 200. Confidence intervals, this is really from statistics, but confidence intervals is how accurate is the data that you collected. So you could say our target was a sample size of 200, but we timed out on our survey over 6 weeks. We only gathered 150 responses. So our data we have is a sample size of 150, which has a confidence interval of 90%. That means it's about 90% accurate. It could be swing 10% on these answers either way. Whereas if you did, we did a sample size of 200 and it has a confidence interval of 99%. That means it's 99% accurate. It'll only be off by 1%, right? So the size of your sample affects the confidence interval. And then on the bottom left there you have validity. Validity is just saying, is the data that we gathered, is it valid? Is it accurate? What can impact the validity of your research? Did you talk to the right target audience? Or did the market research firm, like I said, if I was Jack in the Box and I wanted to launch salads and I wanted to talk to women, but 50% of their sample was men because they couldn't get enough women to come to their focus group, well then the research isn't very valid, is it? We talked to the wrong target audience. Or the timing could be off. Maybe you did a product test around shakes in the Southeast market, but they happened to have a cold spell during summer for some odd reason, and the weather was really cold, and the sales were terrible for the new product launch. Why? Because the weather's cold, and people don't drink shakes when the weather's cold. So that would affect the validity of your research. Or the questions might be off. You might find afterwards, like, we didn't really ask the right questions. So all that can affect the validity of your research. There's an art form to developing surveys. You definitely want to keep them short. I'm sure you've been the victim of somebody calling you and asking if you had time to do a quote short survey, and then they just keep asking you questions. Well, that's intentional. They ask the most important questions first, and then they get to less important questions as they go along. And frankly, they're going to keep you on the phone as long as you'll continue to ask them, answer their questions. So eventually you'll have to hang up. So you start with the easy and most important questions. You keep them short. You don't want to have leading questions. So questions along the lines of, do you like to travel? Well, who doesn't like to travel? Everybody likes to travel, right? So that'd be kind of a leading question. Or so you want to try to not infect the question with kind of the survey with anything that's leading. And you have to do also what's called a screener. That's not listed here on this slide, but that's common. A screener would make sure that you screen out people who aren't part of your sample. So if I was at Jack in the Box and wanting to research women about bringing salads to Jack in the Box, if I got somebody on the phone for a phone survey, the first question I would ask is, to make sure you're eligible for this survey, we're going to give you $10 if you spend 5 minutes and answer this survey. Are you female? Yes. Are you between the ages of 18 and 34? No. Thank you for your time. We can't have you participate in the survey, right? So the screener makes sure that you're getting the actual people that you want to talk to. So going back to quantitative and qualitative, here's some examples of each of these. So again, quantitative is close-ended questions. People choose a specific answer. Whereas qualitative research questions are open-ended. You're trying to get people's feelings, opinions, and these types of questions would be representative of that. In a good survey, ask both. It asks quantitative first and follows up with a qualitative. The last piece I want to cover are Google Forms, and you see a couple links down here on your last two bullet points on this slide. So check out Google Forms. It's an awesome tool. You'll probably be doing some survey work in your college career, certainly with your upper division classes, whether you're a marketing major or otherwise. Your professors will probably be asking you to do some primary research. And if you are a marketing major, then you definitely want to get familiar with how to do some surveys. It's an awesome tool. It's free, and it basically enables you to build a survey by different types of questions. It could be a scaled question or even open-ended questions. And Google rolls up all the answers for you and puts them in these nice charts for you, all free. And then you can take those charts and drop them into a PowerPoint for a presentation. So super easy, much easier than I was a student your age and we had to kind of tabulate everything by hand and do it the hard way.